Hi, family. My name is Jackie. I am an alcoholic. And here in this 12-step fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, we do have an 11th step. So I want to do just a 1-minute meditation to invite God in so I can set myself aside and just be a channel because that's all I seek to be. Here we go. Thank you so much. So, family, my name is Jackie. I am an alcoholic. My home group is the Montclair Morning Meditation Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. They meet virtually as well as in person in Montclair, New Jersey. As you can see from my name, I live in Miami, but I got sober in Northern New Jersey, Area 44, whoop, whoop, service. And so that's where I met my sponsor. That's where I counted my first 90 days in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's where did service. So that can they when the pandemic came, they started to meet virtually, and so I was able to go back to them even though I had groups down here that I attended here in Miami, Florida, where I live now. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor, and I have sponsees who have sponsees, and my sobriety date is November 20th of 2005. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous originally on June 20th of 2005. And before I got here, I need to make sure that I qualify, and that is to tell you that I believe there's two kinds of alcoholics, some that cross the line at some point in their drinking careers, and some that are alkies straight from the chute. And that was me, right out from the beginning, from the first moment that I drank to the last drink. I always drank as much as I could, as fast as I could, until there was nothing left, or I ran out or I passed out. And I had a body that was smarter than my mind that would shut down my mind, because that was ultimately the problem, is that I have a mind that was constantly going. I have a mind that has a mind of its own. And if I was over here, I wanted to be over there. I felt I was born at the wrong time, at the wrong place, to the wrong people. And that if only things were different, if only they would, if only I, could get out of here, wherever here was. So I was a geographic puller. I was also a hostage taker, because I was a user and abuser, not just of bottles, but of bottles on two legs. And for me, what that looked like is your existence was to make me feel better about me. And so I was a geographic taker. I was a hostage. I was a geographic puller. I was a hostage taker. And I'm originally from Miami, Florida. And I like to say that God knew I was coming, because I was born in a hospital named Mercy. And he knew exactly what I needed. And so I um, was a binge drinker and a blackout drinker. And like I said, I always thought everyone and everything else was the problem, and that I was the solution. And it wasn't until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and really did the work out of the book, um, as those first 100 did, that um, I began that I woke up and I saw that I was the problem and the solution was God, right? But I couldn't see that for the majority of my life before I came into the rooms of AA. And, I did academically well in spite of myself. And so that sort of fueled my ego. And I worked my way up the Eastern Seaboard. I did 6 years as a Navy wife at one point, and I came back to Florida, and then I ended up in northern New Jersey because I got accepted to postgraduate school. And I'm one of those that the old timers would say, there's no one too dumb for this program, but there are many that are much too smart. And I was one of those that was much too smart for my own good. You couldn't tell me nothing. And I had to win every argument. I had to have the last word. I always had to be right. And if it wasn't in black and white, you couldn't prove it to me. And even if it was black and white, it was questionable. So I was very much the belligerent one. By the time I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was in my early 30s. I had lived in various different states along the Eastern Seaboard. I'd burned through 2 marriages, and there were lots of sweet relationships and not so sweet relationships that were lost. I was a tornado roaring through the lives of others. And I felt like I was the victim. I felt like everything happened to me. And my drinking and the alcohol use and abuse was the only relief that I could find for what ailed me. And so, of course, I was going to go to that. It soothed my nerves. It made everything all right. It made everything feel okay, like I could handle life. But what ended up happening is that alcohol turned on me and it stopped working. And there's no more horrible place to be if you're an alcoholic trying to get to oblivion and you can't get drunk. And I was starting to break down mentally, physically. I had never really been spiritually right, right? I had always suffered from the spiritual malady, but mentally, physically, emotionally, I was breaking down. And by the time I made it to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I I stuttered when I spoke. I could not form complete sentences. I was suicidal. I was homicidal. I would beg God at night to not wake me up in the mornings. And I would wake up in the mornings cursing God for giving me another day because I felt like I was such a useless waste of space. And I just couldn't continue to face life. And I wasn't dying quick enough. And I didn't understand that I was dying from the disease of alcoholism slowly but surely, but I couldn't see it. It wasn't happening fast enough. So finally, I started making the rounds of the emergency rooms because I thought I was having a heart attack, but what it was were panic attacks. And there was nothing, you know, they told me to follow up with my primary care doctor, which I did, and she referred me to a counselor because she thought I was suffering from depression and anxiety, and I had all kinds of gastric problems as well. And so I started to see this counselor, and this counselor said to me one day, well, the counselor was a advanced practice nurse, and she was also prescribing meds to me, psychotropic meds. And she said to me, I don't understand. Everything I try, you're not getting better. How much are you actually drinking? And it was the first time in my life that I was actually honest with somebody about exactly how much I was drinking. And she said, oh no, you're an alcoholic. You need to go to AA. And my reaction was, oh no, I'm not. I am not one of them. And I'm not going there. And I'm not doing that. And this is coming from someone who, by the way, um, would take up any dare, would do all kinds of crazy things. Like I have jumped out of planes, I have been on motorcycles, I have, gone caving, like done crazy illegal caving, just done all kinds of stuff, but I'm not going there and I'm not doing that and I'm not one of them. And that's what I call alkalogical thinking, right? It makes logical sense to the alcoholic, but to the normal person, their jaws on the floor, not understanding why. For example, husband number two, I met in a bar and married him 6 weeks later because I thought that was a good idea. I am grateful I'm here. Um, I she said, I said, I'm not going to do that. And she said, well, then I know someone who specializes in alcohol addiction and you'll have to go to him. And if you don't go to him, then I won't continue to treat you. And I said, all right. So I started going to this other guy and he was telling me like a diabetic needs insulin, you're an alcoholic and you need to go to AA. That's your medicine. And I kept insisting, not me. I'm not like that. I don't need to do that. That's not my problem. Don't you see? It's the job, it's him, it's her, it's them, it's my parents, it's everyone and everything else but alcoholism. And I clearly did not understand the disease concept. And he said to me, try to do uh 90 days. And I'm like, and I said, what do you mean 90 days? He says, try not to drink for 90 days. And so I said, no problem, because I had been a binge drinker. So I pulled out a calendar and I'm marking X's, and I'm, so proud of myself, but I couldn't get to 90 days. I couldn't get to 90 days. And at one point I got to like 86 days and he says to me, so what are you going to do on day 91? And I said, I'm going to drink. And he says, what do you mean you're going to drink? And I said, well, how else do you celebrate not being an alcoholic? I mean, that's how alcoholic I am, people. Okay. Like alcohological nonsense. And so after a year and a half of like not leaving my home, of being suicidal, of just, seeing this therapist, not being able to work, not being able to go to school, not being able to show up for life whatsoever, um, I relented and I decided I was going to go to AA. And on my way to the AA meeting, I had to pass a liquor store, and it was an AA meeting that started at 8 p.m. at night. And I thought, I need to stop at the liquor store to pick up a bottle now, because when the meeting lets out at 9, the liquor store is going to be closed and I'm not going to have anything to drink. And suddenly that thought was supplanted with the thought, what are you, nuts? You're going to an AA meeting so you can stop drinking. You're not going to get a bottle. Just go to the meeting. And that's what I did. I went to the meeting and then I found like a women's meeting, and I went to one meeting a week for 5 months. And I wanted to do AA the Jackie Buffet way. I was not going to get a network. I'm not going to tell you my business. I'll meet you in a bar and I'll take you home and I'll marry you 6 weeks later, but I'm not telling you my business, right? These strangers. I thought that the sponsor's job was to talk me out of walking into the bar. So I'd gotten a sponsor that I only called twice in the 5 months when I was standing outside a bar getting ready to walk in. And I tried to read the big book, but I couldn't understand it. And I didn't have someone to decode it for me and explain to me what all that meant. Like, what the hell does a Hampshire Grenadier have to do with me? I'm blowing up my life right and left, but I don't know what that has to do with me. And, they said 90 meetings in 90 days. And I was like, I have a life I'm busy, like not showing up for. I am not going to be doing that. And um, I felt like I already believe in God. I don't need your God. I'm not joining your cult. And I'm not making you any freaking coffee. Like that's what Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks is for. Like that was my attitude. I was very much the belligerent one. So after 5 months of not drinking and not changing and doing doing AA the Jackie Buffet way, I ended up drinking. And this is the insane thought, right? I had been powerless over alcohol my whole life. My whole life, alcohol was the manager of my life. It dictated everything, right? My life was unmanageable. I was clearly not just insane. I was, as the big book describes, strangely insane in the choices that I made, drinking and not drinking. But what happened was after 5 months of not drinking and not changing and having nothing mood altering in my system other than the disease of alcoholism, this is the thought that came to mind. Alcoholics drink every day. I haven't had a drink in 5 months. Therefore, I must not be an alcoholic. And I walked straight to the liquor store and I bought a bottle for Friday and a bottle for Saturday. And I never, ever, if I had bottles, I drank everything I had. Like there was not going to be anything for Saturday. That was another insane aspect of it. Like I would buy wine racks over and over and like put boots and magazines and other things in them because I could never keep booze in my house. Alcologically minded, I'm telling you, I'm insane. And the next day, so I had originally come to AA on June 20th of 2005, did it 5 months my way, didn't work, and then came back on November 20th of 2005. And what is the difference? The difference is that when I came back on November 20th of 2005, I became as willing as only the dying can be. And a desperate man does not ask stupid questions. It doesn't matter why the life preserver is orange and not red, or red and not orange. Just throw the thing to me and I will do whatever you tell me to do. And that's exactly what happened, is that I went to an AA meeting that I had been going to, the only one I'd been going to for 5 months. They said, is there anyone having a problem with their sobriety today? I was not going to rat myself out, but my hand went up. Another spiritual experience. My hand went up against my will. I ratted myself out. And then when I left that meeting, I had this realization that everything I had ever set my mind to, I'd been able to achieve except for staying stopped drinking. I could stop, but I couldn't stay stopped. And these people knew how to do it, and I clearly did not. And I better be willing to do whatever it was that they told me to do. And on top of everything else, I wasn't sure I wanted what they had, but I knew for darn sure that I didn't want what I had anymore because it clearly was not working. And that's when like everything opened up. The woman that was to become my sponsor became my sponsor. I found the Montclair morning meditation meeting, which met at 7 a.m. every morning. When I got tired of going to that meeting, I found newcomers, people with DUIs that needed rides to the meeting so I could get myself to that meeting. But most importantly, what ended up happening is that this woman sat me down and took me line by line through the big book and the 12 and 12. And I put pen to paper and I started turning that mirror in on myself for the first time of my life. I started to really be able to look at me and the role I played. There's no part about anything. I can't do parts. The reason I can't do parts is because it's like a fishing story. Every time I retell the story, the fish gets bigger. Well, with parts, every time I think about my part gets smaller and your part gets bigger, and suddenly I'm the victim and the persecuted one. So it's where was I at fault? Where was I to blame? We got it all down on paper. And that's exactly what I did. I did the resentment inventory, the fear inventory, the sex inventory. I even did the sex ideal. And what ended up happening was that I made a commitment to not get involved in any relationships for a year because I had been, like I said, taking hostages my whole life. And I didn't agree with it. I didn't want to. I didn't like it. But she said to me, Jackie, whenever we settle, we end up with less than what we've settled for. Do you really think that that's God's will for you? And of course, I was like, no. So I decided and agreed to keep my business to myself and focus on myself and learn to love myself for the first time in my life and work these steps and really get to know myself. And I got free. So by the end of that year, not only was I working with sponsees, but I had no interest in getting involved in any kind of relationship. And in my 13th month, I met a man with 13 years in the rooms, and we've been together ever since. And of all my relationships, ironically enough, everyone I was ever with was an alcoholic or a drug addict. And I like to believe that God decided that if I was going to be with an alkie, it might as well be a recovered one if I was going to be in recovery as well. And so we've been doing this journey together for the past 17 years now. And what I want to tell you that's really important for me to say is that I left home because I thought the problem was my parents and my home. And after almost 2 decades of being away from home, My dad had had a fall, and I came to visit with my husband for 3 days, and I stayed. I stayed to be a caregiver. So from August of 2013 to today, because Alcoholics Anonymous taught me how to be a sober woman of self-respect and dignity, I've been caregiving for my parents in the home I grew up in that I couldn't wait to leave when I was a young girl. And I sleep in the little bedroom that I slept in when I was a little girl. I gave up the home we had. I was able to transfer jobs, my AA community, and my husband was willing to help me with on this journey. Daddy passed away in 2019. Mommy is 90, and we're still doing the deal with no end in sight because she's strong like bull. She's a little Cuban lady. Daddy was a little Colombian man. And when I say little, I mean 5'1", although I just took her to the doctor this past week and she's 4'11". So I tell you all this to tell you that it wasn't them that was the problem, it was me. And the solution wasn't me, the solution was God. And I still have the job that I had when I came into the rooms of AA. September 5th, God willing, will be 29 years that I've been working for the same employer. And I'm telling you right now that if I worked for me, I would have fired me a long time ago. But God saw fit that AA would help me to become a recovered woman so that I could keep this job, so I could be this daughter, so I could do all these things that I of my own could not do. It is the Father that doeth the works, right? I just need to show up. I just need to be willing to, chop wood and carry water. And I want to close with this. Um, Two things that I want to close with. One is that the first, I was taught that the first promise of the big book is on the cover page. Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of women, men and women have recovered ED from alcoholism. And that has been my experience. And that my sponsor had me write in the inside cover of my big book, am I willing to go to any length to stay sober? Not get sober, stay sober. And I am, and I have. And as a direct result of that, I've got a life beyond my wildest dreams that I could only do that there is nothing that I can do for Alcoholics Anonymous that could ever repay what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me. I meet with a sponsee almost every single day. I'm in the work, I'm doing the meetings, I'm doing everything I can, and continue to take inventories and continue to be accountable, continue to take service commitments, and continue to give freely what was so freely given to me. Because as described in the family afterwards, I have struck a limitless load, LODE load, and I have to insist on giving away every last ounce of it in order to keep what I've been given. Thank you.